Stop for a moment. Don't move. Don't reach for your phone. Don't adjust your posture. Don't do anything to present yourself differently than you are right now. Because what I'm about to tell you won't care about how normal you look on the surface. It will only care about what moves beneath it. You've spent your entire life being told to be normal, fit in, act appropriately, follow the social script that everyone else seems to know instinctively. And maybe you've done a decent job of it. You've learned the right words, the right expressions, the right distance to stand from other people. You've become so good at normal that nobody questions it anymore. They accept it. They expect it. They've even started to believe it's authentic. But here's the problem that nobody wants to talk about. Beneath every act of normalcy, beneath every socially acceptable gesture, beneath every curated version of yourself that you present to the world, there's something older running the show. Something ancient. Something that predates social media, social etiquette, and even civilization itself. These are your hidden instincts. The primal drives that controlled your ancestors' survival, that shaped human behavior for hundreds of thousands of years, and that still control you today. The difference is, you've learned to hide them. You've learned to disguise them, to channel them, to pretend they don't exist. But they do exist, and they control far more of your behavior than you realize. What we're about to explore together isn't pop psychology. It's not self-help. It's not motivational nonsense designed to make you feel better about your problems. What we're about to do is pull back the curtain on 30 specific instincts that are firing in your brain right now as you read this. Instincts that are influencing your decisions, your relationships, your work, your loneliness, your ambitions, and your fears. Instincts that make you behave in ways that make no sense until you understand what they're actually trying to accomplish. The uncomfortable truth is this. You are not as in control of yourself as you believe. You're not making rational decisions based on logical analysis. You're operating from a control panel that was designed millions of years ago, and the switches haven't changed much since then. They've just learned to hide in the shadows of modern life. Think about the last time you felt anxiety in a situation where nobody was physically threatening you. Your boss called you into their office. A notification popped up on your phone. You noticed someone staring at you in public. No real danger, no actual threat to your survival. And yet, your heart raced. Your palms sweated. Your mind spiraled into catastrophe scenarios. That wasn't an overreaction. That was your ancient survival instinct doing exactly what it was designed to do. Keep you alive in a world where social rejection literally meant death. Or think about the last time you felt compelled to buy something you didn't need. You saw it once, and suddenly you had to have it. You couldn't stop thinking about it. You justified it. You rationalized it. You convinced yourself it was necessary. But deep down, you felt the pull, that primal drive for status, for accumulation, for signaling your worth to the tribe. That instinct was designed to help you compete for resources and mates. Now it's designed to keep corporations wealthy, while you're left wondering why your apartment is full of things you never use. These 30 instincts we're about to explore aren't flaws. They're not character defects. They're not signs that you're broken or damaged or fundamentally wrong. They're evidence that you're human. That beneath the thin veneer of civilization, beneath the social media profiles and the professional presentations, you're still operating on the same basic programming that kept your species alive. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people never recognize these instincts in themselves. They see them in other people, the narcissist who can't stop talking about themselves, the person who's always checking their phone, the coworker who's obsessed with status and competition. But when it comes to their own behavior, they're blind. They've become so good at hiding these instincts that they've actually hidden them from themselves. This is what separates the people who understand themselves from the people who are constantly confused by their own behavior. The ones who recognize their instincts aren't being controlled by them. The ones who see the hidden switch don't have to flip it. They have a choice. That's what this video is really about. Not judgment, not criticism, not some attempt to convince you that you're fundamentally flawed because you're human. It's about recognition. About seeing these 30 instincts in yourself, in your daily behavior, in the tiny moments where you catch yourself doing something that doesn't make logical sense until you understand the programming underneath it. Here's the deal we're making right now. Stay with me through all 30. Some will hit you immediately. You'll recognize yourself in them instantly. Others will take a moment to click. Some might even make you uncomfortable because they expose parts of yourself you've been hiding from. But if you finish this video understanding even one instinct about yourself or someone close to you, really understanding it, not just intellectually, but in a way that changes how you see their behavior, then you'll have gained something valuable. Because awareness is the first step toward choice. We're not chasing vanity metrics here. We're chasing something deeper. We're chasing the truth about why you do what you do. We're chasing the recognition of the old program still running in your new world. And if you're ready to see how deep this goes, stick with me. Because what we're about to uncover isn't just interesting, it's transformative. Instinct 1. The validation spiral. Your brain is addicted to external validation, and it's not your fault. It's actually a feature, not a bug. But it's a feature that was designed for a world of about 150 people, not 8 billion. Here's how this instinct works. When someone likes your post, your brain releases dopamine. That chemical hit feels good. It registers as confirmation that you're doing something right, that you matter, that you've been seen and approved by the tribe. In ancient human societies, this validation was literally a matter of life and death. If the tribe didn't approve of you, you were cast out. Cast out meant death, so your brain developed an exquisite sensitivity to any signal that you were accepted or rejected. Now, fast forward to today. You post something on social media and check the notifications obsessively. You refresh the page. You check again. You might not even realize you're doing it, but your fingers know the pattern. Unlock phone, open app, check, repeat. Why? Because each notification is another hit of dopamine. Each like is another vote that you're okay, you're normal, you're part of the group. The validation spiral never ends. There's always another notification to check, always another reason to refresh, always another hit available if you just press the button one more time. But here's the dark part of this instinct. The more external validation you receive, the less internal validation you develop. You stop trusting your own assessment of yourself and start depending entirely on other people's approval. You can't wear an outfit without wondering if others will approve. You can't have an idea at work without first checking if it's the kind of idea that will be praised. You can't make a decision without consulting the opinions of people who don't know your full situation. Some people develop a particularly twisted version of this instinct. They become contrarian, not because they actually believe different things, but because they've learned that disagreement gets more attention than agreement. They might not even realize they're doing it. It looks like they're just confident in unpopular opinions. But underneath, it's the same validation spiral. The comments, the arguments, the engagement, it's all hitting the dopamine button. Controversy is just another form of validation. The insidious part is how invisible this instinct becomes when it's fully activated. You're not consciously seeking approval. You're just living your life, but you're simultaneously hyper-aware of how your life looks, whether others are noticing, whether your choices are impressive enough. It's like having an invisible audience watching your every move. And the worst part? That audience isn't real. It's a phantom created by your ancient instinct to care about social status. Instinct 2. The status ladder obsession. Humans are always climbing, always measuring themselves against other people, always asking the question, am I above or below them on the hierarchy? This instinct kept your Shuinch ancestors alive. In tight-knit groups, status meant access to resources, mates, safety, and protection. So your brain evolved to become obsessed with status. But here's what's interesting about status in modern times. You might think you're above this. You might think you don't care about status, that you're focused on more important things. But watch yourself carefully, and you'll see it everywhere. In the car you drive, the salary you mention casually in conversation, the school your kids attend, the neighborhood you live in, the vacations you post about, the accomplishments you can't help but mention. Every single one of these is a status signal. Some people become so focused on status that their entire life becomes a competition. They're never actually winning. They get promoted, but then they see someone who got promoted faster. They buy a nice house, but then they notice someone else's house is nicer. They have an impressive job, but then they meet someone with a more impressive job. The goalpost never stops moving because the instinct wasn't designed to be satisfied. It was designed to keep you pushing, keep you competing, keep you aware of your position in the hierarchy. The really twisted version of this instinct is when people actually sabotage their own happiness to maintain status. They stay in a job they hate because quitting would mean explaining to people that they are no longer as successful. They stay in a relationship they have outgrown because leaving would damage their image. They buy things they can't afford because the status signal matters more than financial stability. They do things they don't enjoy because someone else is doing them and they can't be left behind. What makes this particularly dangerous in modern society is that the hierarchy is now completely artificial and infinitely tall. In a small tribe of 150 people, you could actually reach the top of the status ladder. You could become the most respected person, and then you'd have achieved the ultimate goal of this instinct. But in a world where status is measured against billions of people, where you're constantly seeing people who are more successful, more attractive, more accomplished, you're essentially guaranteeing that you'll never feel satisfied. The ladder extends infinitely upward, and you're always somewhere in the middle, always reaching, always unsatisfied. Instinct 3. The scarcity panic. There's a reason that clearance sales are so effective and limited time offers work so well. There's a reason that when someone tells you something is in short supply, you immediately want it more. It has nothing to do with rationality and everything to do with an ancient instinct designed for a world where scarcity was literally a matter of survival. In prehistoric times, if you saw food, you ate it. Not because you were hungry, but because you never knew when you'd see food again. Scarcity was real. Starvation was a real possibility. So your brain developed an automatic response to scarcity. Grab it now, think about it later. This instinct served you well for hundreds of thousands of years. It kept you alive. But in modern abundance, this instinct becomes your enemy. You see a limited edition item and you panic buy it, even though you don't need it. You see a sale and you feel compelled to purchase because the scarcity signal is hitting your panic button. You see that someone else is getting attention and you feel jealousy, not because you actually want that person's life, but because your scarcity instinct is telling you that there's only so much attention to go around, and if they're getting it, you're losing it. This instinct is so powerful that companies have designed entire business models around it. They create artificial scarcity. They produce limited quantities not because production is limited, but because the scarcity signal drives sales. They use countdown timers on websites, not because the deal is actually ending, but because the artificial time pressure triggers your panic reflex. They show you that other people are buying, that supplies are running out, that you need to act now or you'll miss out forever. And people fall for it, not because they're stupid, but because their ancient instinct to panic when something is scarce is stronger than their modern brain telling them they have more than enough. The scarcity reflex fires automatically, subconsciously, before conscious thought can intervene. By the time you've realized you didn't actually need it, it's already in your cart. Instinct 4. The tribal conformity drive. Being part of the tribe wasn't optional in ancient human society, it was survival. Cast out from the group meant death, so your brain developed an incredibly powerful instinct to conform, to fit in, to not stand out too much, to follow the social rules, to do what everyone else is doing. This instinct is why you feel uncomfortable when you're the only one who disagrees, why you go along with group decisions even when you think they're wrong, why you adopt the same beliefs as your peer group, why you speak the same way when you're with people from your hometown versus when you're with your college friends, why you feel like a fraud when you're the only person in a room who doesn't fit the demographic. Your instinct is constantly asking, am I safe? Am I part of the group? Will they cast me out? The interesting part about this instinct is that it operates at a level you're barely aware of. You don't consciously decide to conform. You just find yourself adopting the opinions, the fashion, the behaviors of the people around you. You might even genuinely believe that you're being an individual while you're actually following the exact same script as everyone else in your social circle. In modern society, this instinct creates echo chambers. You follow people on social media who agree with you, so your feed becomes a constant reinforcement of your existing beliefs. You join groups and communities of people who think like you, so you never encounter genuine disagreement. You surround yourself with people who look like you, who come from backgrounds like yours, who have similar worldviews to your own. Your tribe is self-selected, and it's designed to make you feel like you're right about everything. The dangerous part is when this tribal conformity instinct is weaponized, when a charismatic leader tells you that anyone outside the tribe is an enemy, when your peer group decides that a certain group of people should be hated, when belonging to the tribe requires adopting beliefs that hurt other people. Your instinct to conform, to be part of the group, to not stand out, is suddenly pushing you to do things your conscious mind might not approve of. Instinct 5. The comparison death. Spiral human brains evolve to think in relative terms, not absolute terms. You never ask yourself, am I happy? You ask yourself, am I as happy as that person? You never evaluate your success in absolute terms. You evaluate it relative to your peer group. You never assess your attractiveness independently. You compare yourself to others you see. This works somewhat okay when the people you compared yourself to were your immediate neighbors and your local community. You could see where you stood in the local hierarchy, and then you accepted that position. But now, thanks to social media, you're constantly comparing yourself to the most curated, most filtered, most artificially enhanced versions of billions of people. You're comparing your reality to everyone else's highlight reel. And no matter how well you're doing, somewhere someone is doing better. Somewhere someone is more successful, more attractive, more happy, more accomplished. This instinct creates a permanent state of inadequacy. Even when you achieve something impressive, you immediately shift the goalpost and start comparing yourself to people who've achieved more. You buy something nice and then see someone else with something nicer. You get a promotion and then see someone who got promoted to a higher position. You meet someone attractive and then see someone even more attractive. The goalpost never stops moving because your brain is designed to always see someone slightly ahead of you on the ladder, just out of reach, just far enough to make you feel like you're not quite there yet. The comparison instinct also creates jealousy, which is often misunderstood. People think jealousy is about wanting someone else's possessions or life. But actually, jealousy is about identity. It's about seeing someone else achieve or possess something that matters to your sense of status or worth, and realizing that if they have it and you don't, it means something about your relative ranking in the hierarchy. Jealousy is a signal that your status has been threatened. Instinct 6. The rejection sensitivity alarm. Your ancestors lived in small groups where reputation was everything. If people didn't like you, if they rejected you, if they gossiped about you, the damage was real. You could be cast out. You could be isolated. You could be left vulnerable to enemies or predators. So your brain developed an incredibly sensitive alarm system for any signal of rejection or social disapproval. This is why a casual comment from someone can stick with you for years, why a single negative review can ruin your mood, why public criticism hits so much harder than private criticism, why you can give a presentation to 100 people who praise it, but the one person who criticized it is the only one you remember. Your rejection sensitivity alarm is always on, always scanning for signs that people don't approve of you. In modern society, this alarm misfires constantly. You get an email with a neutral tone, and you immediately think someone is angry at you. Someone doesn't respond to your text, and you panic that they're upset. Someone unfollows you on social media, and you interpret it as personal rejection. You make a comment in a group chat, and then obsess over whether people thought you were stupid. Your brain is treating social signals the same way it would treat physical danger. The worst part about this instinct is that it prevents authentic connection. Because you're so sensitive to any sign of rejection, you don't show people who you really are. You present a curated version that you think will be more acceptable. You hold back parts of yourself. You hide your genuine opinions. You laugh at jokes you don't think are funny. You agree with things you disagree with. You do all of this automatically without even thinking about it, because your rejection sensitivity alarm is telling you that safety requires conformity. Instinct 7. The in-group bias effect. Humans divide the world into in-groups and out-groups, the people who are like us and the people who are different from us, the people we trust and the people we're wary of. And here's the bizarre part. People evaluate the in-group as inherently better than the out-group, even when they have identical behavior. Research has shown that if you tell people they're part of a group, even a completely arbitrary group assigned randomly, they will immediately start favoring that group. They'll share more resources with people in their in-group. They'll interpret ambiguous behavior as positive if it's done by in-group members and negative if it's done by out-group members. They'll make excuses for in-group members' failures, but attribute out-group members' failures to character flaws. This instinct evolved because tribal loyalty was important for survival. But in modern society, it creates all kinds of problems. It creates political polarization where people can't even consider that the other side might have valid points. It creates racial and ethnic bias where people automatically trust people who look like them and are suspicious of people who don't. It creates religious tribalism where members of your faith are seen as inherently good and members of other faiths are seen as suspect. It creates corporate loyalty where employees believe their company is better than competitors, even when there's no objective evidence for that belief. The really insidious part of this instinct is that it operates at a subconscious level. You don't consciously decide to trust people from your in-group more. It just happens automatically. You listen to arguments from in-group members more charitably. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You assume good intentions. But with out-group members, you're suspicious. You look for the hidden agenda. You assume they're biased or self-interested. And you don't even realize you're doing it because it feels natural, like common sense, like you're just seeing things clearly. Instinct 8. the dominance, signaling need. Every human harbors a desire to demonstrate competence and dominance, to show others that they're capable, strong, smart, skilled. This instinct evolved because in human societies, dominance determines access to resources and reproductive opportunities. The stronger members of the group get the best food, the best shelter, the most desirable mates. In modern society, this instinct manifests as a constant need to demonstrate competence. You tell people about your accomplishments. You highlight your strengths in conversations. You subtle brag about your successes. You correct people when they're wrong about things you're knowledgeable about. You want to be seen as smart, capable, successful. You want to win arguments. You want to be the expert in the room. Here's what makes this instinct particularly interesting. People who are truly competent often don't need to display it. But people who are insecure about their competence feel a desperate need to prove it. They overcorrect. They over-explain. They bring up their achievements in contexts where it's not relevant. They can't just have a conversation without turning it into a demonstration of their knowledge or capability. The competitive version of this instinct is even more interesting. Some people have a visceral need to win, to be better, to dominate. They can't play a casual game without trying hard. They can't have a conversation without trying to win. They can't work on a team without trying to be the most valuable player. They experience other people's success as a personal threat because it means they're not on top of the hierarchy. This version of the dominance instinct can actually be quite destructive because it requires constant vigilance, constant competition, constant worry about being surpassed. Instinct 9. The pattern recognition, hypervigilance. Your brain is an incredibly sophisticated pattern recognition machine. It evolved to identify dangers quickly. See a shadow move in the grass, immediately assume it's a predator. See a person's facial expression change, immediately read their emotion and intention. See a pattern in random data, immediately assume there's meaning to it. This hypervigilance kept your ancestors alive, but in modern life, this pattern recognition instinct misfires constantly. Your brain sees patterns that don't exist. It sees meaning in randomness. It connects dots that shouldn't be connected. A person doesn't respond to your text, so you create a whole story about why. Maybe they're upset at you. Maybe they don't value your friendship. Maybe they're ghosting you. But actually, they were just busy and forgot. Your brain jumped to a pattern, a narrative, a conclusion that felt true even though it was wrong. This instinct is also why conspiracy theories are so compelling. Your brain is literally designed to see patterns, and once it identifies a pattern, it wants to see that pattern everywhere. So if you learn about one conspiracy theory, your brain will start finding evidence of that conspiracy everywhere. It will interpret ambiguous information as confirmation. It will dismiss contradictory information. It will create an entire worldview based on the initial pattern, even if that pattern was based on incomplete information. The insidious part of this instinct is that it feels like truth. When your brain identifies a pattern, it doesn't feel like you're making an assumption. It feels like you're seeing something that's objectively real. So you defend your pattern, your narrative, your understanding of reality with confidence, not realizing that your confidence is just a byproduct of your brain's pattern recognition system doing what it evolved to do. Instinct 10. The fear of missing out amplification. FOMO is a modern term for an ancient instinct. Your brain is designed to be acutely aware of what your peer group is doing. If they're gathering somewhere and you're not there, your brain registers that as a social threat. What are they talking about? What are they bonding over? Are they talking about you? Are they leaving you out on purpose? Your brain wants to know, wants to be part of it, wants to make sure you're not on the periphery of the group. In modern times, this instinct has been weaponized. Social media exists specifically to activate your FOMO. You see that other people are having fun somewhere, and you're not there. You see that an event is happening and you weren't invited. You see that people are bonding over something and you don't understand it, and your FOMO instinct fires. You feel the anxiety of missing out. You feel the fear of being excluded. You feel the urgency to catch up, to get in, to be included. What makes FOMO particularly destructive is that it prevents you from being present in your actual life. You're at one event, but you're checking your phone to see what's happening at another event. You're with one group of people, but you're wondering what other groups of people are doing. You're never fully present because part of your attention is always scanning for what you might be missing. And this constant, partial attention is partially responsible for the anxiety and the feeling of dissatisfaction that so many people experience. The really dark part of FOMO is that it's designed to be infinite. There's always something you're missing. There's always an event you weren't invited to. There's always a conversation you're not part of. There's always someone else who's doing something cooler. And because your FOMO instinct evolved in a world where you had limited social options, in a world where there actually were only a certain number of things happening at any given time, your brain doesn't know how to handle a world where infinite things are always happening, and you can only attend a tiny fraction of them. Instinct 11. The self-deception mechanism. Humans are remarkably skilled at lying to themselves. We engage in what psychologists call motivated reasoning, which is just a fancy way of saying we believe what we want to believe regardless of evidence. Your brain is not designed to see reality clearly. It's designed to see reality in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. Here's how this works. You make a decision. Any decision. Maybe you buy something expensive. Maybe you treat someone poorly. Maybe you make a choice that contradicts your values. Your conscious mind registers the contradiction. But your brain doesn't like cognitive dissonance. It doesn't like holding two contradictory beliefs. So it starts working immediately to rationalize your behavior. It constructs a story that makes your behavior seem reasonable. It finds evidence that supports your rationalization and ignores evidence that contradicts it. Before you know it, you genuinely believe the story. You've convinced yourself that your behavior was justified, that you're actually a good person, that your contradictions don't exist. This is why people can be incredibly cruel and still see themselves as kind. This is why people can be selfish and still see themselves as generous. This is why people can hold bigoted views and see themselves as open-minded. Your brain is actively constructing a narrative that justifies your behavior and makes you feel good about yourself. And because this narrative is constructed by your own mind, it feels completely true. It feels like objective reality. The really twisted part is that this self-deception instinct is adaptive in some ways. If you believe that you were genuinely a flawed, cruel, selfish person, you might not be able to function. So your brain protects you by constructing a favorable narrative. But this same mechanism also prevents you from genuinely changing, because you don't see that you need to change. From your perspective, you're already good. It's everyone else that's wrong. Instinct. 12. The groupthink amplification. When you're part of a group, your individual reasoning ability decreases. This isn't weakness. It's not a character flaw. It's literally how the human brain works when it's in a group context. Your brain switches into a different mode. It becomes less critical, more trusting, more willing to go along with the group consensus. This instinct evolved because in small groups, where cooperation was essential, constantly questioning the group could be disruptive. If the group had decided on a course of action, the best strategy was to go along with it. The group had more information than any individual. The group's collective wisdom was usually better than any individual's opinion. So your brain evolved to suppress individual judgment when you're part of a group. But in modern times, this instinct creates groupthink. It creates situations where intelligent people make collectively stupid decisions because they're too willing to go along with the consensus. It creates cults where people convince each other of absurd things. It creates mobs that do violence. It creates corporate cultures where everyone knows the decision is wrong, but nobody wants to be the one who speaks up. It creates political movements where reasonable people become unreasonable, because they're part of a group that's reinforcing increasingly extreme views. What makes groupthink particularly dangerous is that it operates at a subconscious level. You don't consciously decide to suppress your judgment. You just find yourself not raising your objections. You find yourself smiling and nodding along. You find yourself gradually adopting beliefs you wouldn't have adopted as an individual. And when you get home and reflect on it, you're often shocked at how influenced you were. But in the moment, in the group context, it felt completely natural. Instinct 13. The authority-obedience drive. Humans are programmed to respect authority and follow orders from authority figures. This instinct evolved because in hierarchical social structures, following the leader usually led to better survival outcomes than questioning the leader. The person in charge typically had more information. The person in charge typically had the authority to enforce consequences. So your brain developed an automatic respect for authority. The famous Milgram experiments demonstrated just how powerful this instinct is. Researchers told participants to administer electric shocks to another person. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. An authority figure in a lab coat told them to keep increasing the voltage, and most people did, even though it felt morally wrong, even though the victim was screaming in pain, even though they had the power to stop at any time. Most people obeyed the authority figure. In modern times, this instinct manifests as an automatic respect for people in positions of authority. You believe your boss more than you believe your peers. You believe a doctor more than you believe your own body. You believe a politician who has an official position more than you believe people without official positions. You believe a scientist because they have credentials. And while credentials and authority usually correlate with knowledge, sometimes they don't. Sometimes authority figures are wrong. Sometimes they're not the best source of information. But your brain's authority-obedience instinct makes you believe them anyway. This instinct also makes you susceptible to manipulation by people who adopt the trappings of authority. Someone in a uniform, someone with a title, someone speaking with confidence, someone acting like they belong. Your brain automatically gives them more credibility than someone without these markers, and they can use that credibility to persuade you to do things you wouldn't normally do. Instinct 14, the revenge satisfaction impulse. When someone wrongs you, your brain wants revenge. Not revenge that's proportional to the offense, revenge that's satisfying, revenge that punishes them for daring to wrong you. This instinct evolved because in ancient times, if someone harmed you and got away with it, others would see that as a sign of weakness and would harm you more. So your brain developed a powerful drive toward revenge, toward restoring balance, toward making sure that wrongdoing didn't go unpunished. Here's the weird part about the revenge instinct. It doesn't actually care about practical outcomes. It cares about the feeling of satisfaction. Revenge can be irrational, can be self-destructive, can harm you more than it harms the person you're taking revenge on. But if it delivers that satisfaction, if it makes the wrongdoer suffer, your instinct considers it a win. This is why people spend years holding grudges. This is why people sabotage their own lives to punish someone who wronged them. This is why feuds continue for generations, with each generation seeking revenge on the other generation. This is why people pursue legal action that costs them money and time just to punish the other person. The revenge instinct doesn't care about your well-being. It cares about delivering justice, or what feels like justice. In modern society, the revenge instinct is particularly destructive because the ability to harm people is so easy. You can publicly humiliate someone. You can spread rumors. You can ruin their reputation. You can post embarrassing photos. And your revenge instinct tells you to do these things, tells you that the satisfaction will be worth it. But what often happens is that the revenge backfires. The person you're trying to punish doesn't actually suffer as much as you hoped. And in the process, you've branded yourself as the kind of person who holds grudges and seeks revenge, which damages your own reputation and relationships. Instinct 15. The attraction to novelty, stimulation. Your brain evolved in an environment where novelty was information. Something new might be dangerous or it might be an opportunity. Either way, it demanded your attention, so your brain developed an intense attraction to novelty. Anything new captures your attention. Anything familiar is boring. This instinct is why you can binge watch a new show, but you can't re-watch an old favorite. Why you get bored in long-term relationships. Why you need constantly changing stimulation to feel engaged. Why you've probably got multiple apps on your phone doing basically the same thing, but you still download more. Why your attention span is getting shorter. Why you're addicted to scrolling through social media even though you know the content is repetitive and low quality. Here's what makes this instinct particularly problematic. Mastery requires repeated engagement with the same material. Learning requires boredom. Growth requires doing the same thing over and over until you improve. But your novelty-seeking instinct is constantly pulling you away from the boring practice and toward the exciting new thing. So you start 10 hobbies and master none. You start 10 projects and finish none. You start 10 relationships and never let them deepen. This instinct is also why social media is so addictive. Every scroll is a new stimulus. Every notification is a novel event. Your brain is constantly getting little hits of novelty. But because it's repetitive novelty, your brain adapts to it. The same type of novelty stops being interesting. So the algorithm has to make the novelty more extreme, more outrageous, more shocking to continue capturing your attention. This is why social media tends toward extremism. The algorithm is literally selecting for content that's novel and stimulating enough to overcome your brain's adaptation to novelty. Instinct 16. The survival hoarding impulse. Even though you live in abundance, you have an instinct to hoard resources, to stockpile, to keep more than you need, to hold on to things in case you need them later. This instinct evolved in a world of scarcity. You never knew when you'd see food again, so you stored it. You never knew when you'd need something, so you kept it. This is why you have boxes of stuff in your attic that you haven't used in years, why you keep clothes that don't fit anymore, why you have kitchen gadgets you've never used, why you keep junk that you know you'll never need. Your brain is telling you to hold on to things because what if, someday, you need them? Your brain doesn't calculate the cost of storage, the opportunity cost of the space they take up, the mental burden of having too many possessions. It just hears the ancient signal. Keep this. You might need it. This instinct is why people accumulate debt trying to buy things they don't need. Why people's homes become cluttered and overwhelming. Why minimalism feels so unnatural even though it makes people happier. Your brain is fighting against you, telling you to hold on to things, telling you that scarcity might return any day. In modern consumer society, this hoarding instinct is exploited constantly. Marketing is designed around the fear of missing out, the fear of not having something you might need. Companies create products for every possible situation. They tell you that you need this thing, and if you don't have it, you're unprepared. And your hoarding instinct listens. Instinct 17. The disgust magnification. Response. Disgust evolved as a mechanism to keep you safe from contamination. If something smelled rotten, it probably was rotten and would make you sick. So you developed a strong disgust response. Your body would literally reject it. You wouldn't even want to touch it. But in modern times, the disgust response has been weaponized. It's been expanded beyond actual contamination risks to include social and moral disgust. You feel physical disgust at people who violate your moral codes. You feel disgust at people who look different, who come from different backgrounds, who have different values. This disgust response is so powerful that it overrides rational thought. You can't think clearly about a person or group that triggers your disgust response because the emotional reaction is too strong. Here's what makes disgust particularly dangerous. It's contagious. If you see someone expressing disgust at a person or group, your own disgust response is activated. You start feeling disgust too. And because disgust feels like a moral judgment, like you're seeing something actually bad, you defend your disgust. You construct reasons why your disgust is justified. You align yourself with others who share your disgust. And before you know it, you're part of a movement that's targeted at a group of people, justified entirely by your shared disgust response. Instinct 18. The scapegoat blame response. When things go wrong, your brain wants to identify someone or something to blame. This instinct evolved because in ancestral environments, identifying what went wrong and holding it accountable helped prevent future problems. But in modern times, this blame instinct often leads you to scapegoat innocent people. When a group is struggling, a charismatic leader can point to an outsider group and say, "They're the problem. All your problems are their fault." And people believe it because your brain wants someone to blame. Your brain doesn't like ambiguity. It doesn't like accepting that problems are complex and multifactorial. It wants a clear villain. So when someone provides that villain, your brain accepts it. This is how genocides happen. This is how entire groups of people become demonized. This is how discrimination and prejudice get justified. Someone provides a clear scapegoat, your blame instinct accepts it, and you're suddenly part of a movement against a group that didn't actually do anything wrong. Even on an individual level, this instinct manifests. When your day goes poorly, you blame specific people. That traffic jam ruined my day. That comment from my boss ruined my mood. That situation with my friend ruined everything. Your blame instinct wants to identify a target so it can feel like there's a reason, a cause, something you can point to and say that's why things went wrong. Instinct 19, the tribal resource competition. Drive humans compete for resources at every level. Individual competition, family competition, group competition, national competition. And your brain is constantly keeping score. Am I getting my fair share? Am I getting more or less than other people? Is my group getting its fair share? This instinct makes you hyper-aware of inequality. It makes you feel resentful when you perceive that someone else is getting more than they deserve. It makes you feel righteous when you believe you're getting less than you deserve. And here's the interesting part. This isn't about absolute amounts. It's about relative amounts. You can be extremely wealthy but feel impoverished because someone else is more wealthy. You can have an excellent life but feel like a failure because someone else's life looks better. This resource competition instinct also makes you zero-sum in your thinking. If someone else is winning, you're losing. If someone else is succeeding, you're failing. If someone else is getting attention, recognition, resources, you're not getting them. This creates a competitive worldview where every interaction is evaluated in terms of who's winning and who's losing. Instinct 20. The arousal-seeking behavior. Your brain is constantly seeking stimulation. It needs novelty, excitement, danger, challenge. It needs to feel alive. And when your environment doesn't provide enough arousal, Your brain will actively seek it out. This instinct is why people engage in risky behaviors, why people pick fights, why people gossip, why people click on shocking videos, why people watch horror movies. Your brain is seeking arousal, and it doesn't really care whether the arousal comes from positive or negative experiences. In modern times, this arousal-seeking instinct makes you a target for outrage content. News media, social media, entertainment industry, all of them know that outrage and scandal and conflict generate engagement. So they create content designed to trigger your arousal-seeking instinct, and you engage with it, you click on it, you share it, you argue about it. Your brain is getting the stimulation it craves. This instinct is also why you might find yourself in toxic relationships or unhealthy situations. The intensity, the drama, the conflict can actually be more stimulating than a stable, peaceful relationship. Your arousal-seeking instinct prefers the excitement of conflict to the boredom of stability. Instinct 21. The parochial altruism. Paradox. Humans are both incredibly altruistic and incredibly tribal. You'll sacrifice for people in your group. You'll go out of your way to help them, but you'll actively harm people outside your group. This paradox is called parochial altruism, and it evolved because helping your group members at the expense of rival groups gave your group a competitive advantage. In modern times, this creates a bizarre morality where you hold different ethical standards for different groups. You feel genuine empathy for suffering within your in-group, but you can read about suffering in other groups with relative indifference. You'll donate time and money to help people in your community, but you might not care at all about people in other communities. You'll make enormous sacrifices for family, but feel no obligation to strangers. This instinct is why nationalism is so powerful, why religious tribalism creates such intense bonds, why people are willing to fight and die for their group. It's also why genocide can happen. When an outgroup is successfully framed as a threat, your parochial altruism transforms into parochial aggression. You're willing to harm them because they're not part of your group. Instinct 22. The fairness obsession. Humans have an intense need for fairness. When something feels unfair, it triggers an emotional response. You'll punish someone unfairly even if it costs you something. You'll accept worse outcomes if you know others are also getting worse outcomes. This instinct evolved because fairness promotes cooperation in groups, and cooperation was essential for survival. But here's the weird part. What counts as fair is highly subjective. You evaluate fairness based on your perspective, your interests, your group's interests. So you and someone else can look at the exact same situation and completely disagree about whether it's fair. You think you deserve more. They think they deserve more. You both think the other person is being unfair. And you're both operating from an instinct that's designed to maintain fairness. This fairness obsession is why people hold grudges about small slights for years, why people argue bitterly about money and relationships, why workplace conflicts often come down to someone feeling like they're not being treated fairly. Your fairness instinct is activated. It's screaming that an injustice has occurred, and you can't let it go. Instinct 23. The reputation management obsession. Your reputation is your social currency. In ancestral time, if people talked badly about you, you were isolated. Isolated meant dead. So your brain developed an obsessive focus on managing your reputation. How are people talking about you? What do they think of you? Are they spreading rumors? In modern times, this reputation management instinct is on overdrive. You manage your reputation on social media, you manage it at work, you manage it in your family, you manage it in your peer group. You're constantly aware of how you're being perceived, constantly adjusting your behavior, constantly trying to manage the narrative about who you are. Here's what makes this particularly exhausting. You're not managing one reputation. You're managing multiple versions of yourself for different audiences. You're one person at work, another person with your family, another person with your friends, another person online. And you're constantly switching between these versions, constantly worried that someone from one context will encounter someone from another context and your cover will be blown. The really insidious part is that this reputation management often prevents authentic connection. You can't show people who you really are because you're too busy managing your image. You can't be vulnerable because vulnerability might damage your reputation. You can't admit mistakes because that might change how people perceive you. So you're trapped in this constant performance, managing multiple selves, never quite feeling authentic. Instinct 24, the sunk cost obsession. Your brain has a hard time letting go of things you've invested in, even when continuing to invest is a bad decision. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. You've already invested time, money, or effort into something, so you feel like you should continue. But rationally, sunk costs shouldn't matter. What matters is whether future action is worth it. But your brain doesn't work rationally. Your brain thinks, I've already invested this much. If I stop now, all that investment was wasted. So you stay in a job you hate because you've already spent 5 years there. You stay in a relationship you've outgrown because you've already invested years in it. You keep pursuing a goal you don't care about anymore because you've already invested so much. This instinct probably evolved because persistence is usually rewarded. But in modern times, it leads you to throw good time after bad. It leads you to make decisions based on past investments rather than future prospects. It locks you into patterns even when the patterns aren't serving you anymore. Instinct 25, the identity fusion trap. Your identity is not something you just have. It's something you actively defend. Once you've identified with something, once you've decided that it's part of who you are, you'll defend it even when you're wrong. You'll defend your beliefs, your group, your status, your achievements, as if they're part of your body. This is why people double down on beliefs even when evidence contradicts them. Why people fight for their group even when their group is wrong. Why people can't admit mistakes. Because admitting a mistake feels like admitting that they're a failure. They've fused their identity with their beliefs, their group, their achievements, so attacking those things feels like a personal attack. The really tricky part about identity fusion is that you don't realize it's happening. You think you're defending objective truth. You think you're defending what's actually right. But really, you're just defending your identity, and your brain will go to extraordinary lengths to protect your identity. Instinct 26, the meaning-making imperative. Human brains are meaning-making machines. You can't encounter random information without trying to find meaning in it. You can't experience random events without creating a narrative that explains them. Even when there's no meaning, even when things are truly random, your brain creates stories. This is why you interpret coincidences as meaningful. Why you see patterns in randomness, why you believe in astrology, numerology, fortune-telling, and other systems of making meaning out of meaninglessness. Your brain is literally designed to create meaning. In modern times, this meaning-making instinct is often manipulated. People tell you stories. Those stories explain your suffering, your failures, your struggles. They tell you that you're special, that things happen for a reason, that your life is part of some larger narrative. And your brain accepts these stories because your brain wants meaning. Your brain doesn't want randomness. Your brain wants to believe that your life makes sense. Instinct 27, the fear of powerlessness avoidance. Humans have an intense need to feel in control. When you feel like you have control, you can cope with almost anything. But when you feel powerless, it's psychologically devastating. So your brain will do almost anything to maintain the illusion of control. This is why people gamble. The randomness of gambling creates an illusion of control. People think they can predict the outcome, even though they can't. This is why people engage in magical thinking. They perform rituals, even though the rituals can't possibly change the outcome. Because performing the ritual creates the illusion of control. In modern society, this control-seeking instinct can become destructive. People might create conspiracy theories to explain things that are actually random, because a conspiracy at least suggests that someone is in control, that someone is making choices. Random suffering is more psychologically devastating than suffering that's inflicted by someone who's in control. Instinct 28. The certainty. Bias need. Your brain prefers certainty to uncertainty. Even if the certainty is about something bad, your brain prefers it to uncertainty. This is why bad news can actually feel better than no news. Why you'd rather know something terrible than wonder if something might be terrible. Your brain just wants certainty. This instinct makes you susceptible to definitive answers. A charismatic person who speaks with absolute certainty is more persuasive than a knowledgeable person who expresses uncertainty. A simple explanation is more psychologically satisfying than a complex one. A worldview that explains everything is more comforting than a worldview that acknowledges ambiguity. In modern times, this certainty bias is exploited. Politicians speak with absolute certainty. Religious leaders speak with absolute certainty. Conspiracy theorists speak with absolute certainty. And people find them more persuasive than experts who say, "We don't know," or "It's complicated." Instinct 29. The mortality awareness. Suppression. Deep down, you know you're going to die, but your brain doesn't like that knowledge. It's too psychologically overwhelming. So your brain works hard to suppress mortality awareness, to keep death at arm's length, to pretend that you have infinite time. This suppression of mortality awareness has consequences. It makes you procrastinate on things that matter. It makes you avoid difficult conversations. It makes you waste time on things that aren't important. Because on some level, you don't believe that time is finite. You don't believe that your opportunities are limited. You think there will always be another chance, another day, another time. Interestingly, when mortality awareness breaks through the suppression, it can be transformative. People who've had near-death experiences, people who've been diagnosed with terminal illnesses, people who've lost loved ones suddenly, often experience a shift in priorities. Suddenly, the things that seemed so important don't matter anymore. Suddenly, the things they'd been avoiding become urgent. Instinct 30. The transcendence-seeking drive. Despite all the primal instincts that drive your behavior, you also have an instinct toward transcendence, toward meaning, toward connection to something larger than yourself. This is probably the newest instinct, evolutionarily speaking, but it's one of the most powerful. Humans create religions, art, music, literature, community, spiritual practices. All of these are ways of expressing the transcendence instinct, the desire to connect to something beyond yourself, the desire to feel part of something larger, the desire to find meaning that transcends your individual survival and reproduction. This instinct can be channeled toward wonderful things: beauty, art, spiritual practice, community, love, but it can also be weaponized. Cults exploit this transcendence instinct. Totalitarian movements exploit it. Extremist movements exploit it, because they know that people will sacrifice almost anything if they believe they're part of something larger and more meaningful than themselves. Final synthesis. So here we are. 30 instincts, 30 ancient programs still running on your modern brain, 30 forces that are shaping your behavior, your relationships, your career, your choices, often without your conscious awareness. The uncomfortable truth that we started with is still the truth. You are not as in control of yourself as you believe. But here's the comforting part. Awareness changes everything. When you recognize the mirror check instinct, when you see yourself glancing at your reflection and understand that you're checking for social acceptance, something shifts. You're no longer unconsciously driven by that impulse. You see it. You understand it. You can choose to respond differently. When you recognize the validation spiral, when you catch yourself obsessively checking your phone for likes and notifications, you can pause. You can ask yourself, am I actually seeking validation? Am I actually that desperate for external approval? And sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes seeing that clearly helps you make a different choice. When you recognize the status ladder obsession, when you notice yourself comparing yourself to someone else or trying to one-up someone in conversation, you can stop. You can recognize that instinct firing and make a conscious choice not to follow it. This is not about overcoming your instincts. It's not about transcending your nature. It's about bringing these instincts into conscious awareness. Because the instincts that run your behavior without your knowledge control you. But the instincts that you see clearly, that you understand deeply, become tools that you can use rather than forces that use you. The most human thing about you is not your rationality. It's not your ability to think your way out of problems. It's your ability to see yourself clearly, to recognize your own instincts, to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And in that moment of recognition, you have a choice. Stop trying to be normal. Stop trying to hide these instincts, pretend they don't exist, suppress them. Because they're not going anywhere. They're the foundation of what you are. Instead, see them, understand them, and then decide consciously what you want to do with them. Because the people who understand themselves never stop asking, why am I doing this? Not with guilt, not with shame, just with genuine curiosity. Why am I reaching for my phone? Why am I comparing myself to that person? Why am I defending that belief? Why do I feel jealous? Why am I seeking approval? Why? And once you start asking those questions, you can't stop seeing the answers. You can't stop noticing when your instincts fire. And once you notice, you can't not have a choice anymore. You can see what's happening beneath the surface and decide, do I want this? Is this serving me? Is this who I want to be? The 30 instincts are still going to be there. They're part of you. They're part of being human. But you don't have to be controlled by them. You just have to see them.